Hi, I'm Randy Meyer. I've covered a lot of stories during my career in television news. Many involved advances in medicine. One of those was diabetes, and I've learned a lot about it over the years. It's an important topic in healthcare. In fact, type 1 diabetes, or juvenile diabetes, is the most chronic and devastating when it's contracted during childhood, and it can sidetrack an otherwise promising life right from the start. Today, I'd like to introduce Speed the Cure, a new foundation dedicated to helping youngsters with type 1 diabetes realize they can achieve their dreams. While the foundation is certainly interested in helping increase the awareness for the need for ongoing medical research and indeed hopes a cure is close, its primary emphasis is much more. It focuses on hope and encouragement. Speed the Cure will showcase the lives of exceptional people who enjoy success despite having type 1 diabetes. Let's face it, a diabetes diagnosis strikes fear into the hearts and lives of young patients and their parents. In a bit, I'll be talking to Bill Hansen from Minneapolis, who has been living with a type 1 diabetic for 27 years. Speed the Cure addresses the notion that a diabetes diagnosis dooms children to a sheltered and even unfulfilled life. Instead, kids and their parents need the encouragement and inspiration to pursue dreams and develop all those natural talents they may have. Sports? You bet. Extracurricular activities? Of course. Outdoor or extreme sports? Absolutely. With the right attitude and desire to manage diabetes, no dream or aspiration should be left off the table. There are a lot of famous athletes and celebrities that have not let diabetes slow them down. None of them missed a step. Names like United States Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, NBA player Adam Morrison, NFL quarterback Jay Cutler, Philadelphia Flyers Bobby Clark, and professional surfer Scott Dunton, just to name a few. But there is something more personal that inspired Bill and his colleagues. It's Bill's own son, Todd, who races stock cars professionally. Bill and his wife, Diane, got the news about Todd's diabetes when he was just 13 months old. Doctors, and just about everyone they knew, told them Todd would spend a good portion of his life in and out of doctors' offices and even the hospital. The exact opposite became true. The Hansens have spent the last 27 years proving to the doctors of that day there is another, better way. Diane and Bill didn't coop Todd up. Instead, they encouraged him to do everything other children were doing and more. Next to his schoolwork, Todd's first love was hockey. He was so good, he earned a spot on the Minneapolis All-City squad and graduated with honors from St. Thomas University. Throughout his youth, Todd traveled to many professional auto races with his dad, Bill, and got a case of racing fever. When he was old enough, Todd belted himself behind the wheel of a race car. Todd was given the freedom to develop his natural talent and racked up an impressive record on Midwest short tracks with more than 90 feature wins before he turned pro just a few years ago. Now, the inspiration for Speed the Cure comes from Bill's life journey with Todd and other youngsters with diabetes he's met along the way. Let's ask Bill to fill in the story. Bill, I want to ask you first, your reaction when you found out that Todd had type 1 diabetes.
Disbelief. Absolute and complete disbelief. My wife had taken him down to the clinic. We knew he wasn't feeling well. She called and said, "You better get down here. Todd's a diabetic. He has got diabetes." And I just couldn't believe it. There's none of my wife's family. There's none of my family. I get down there. It didn't take him long to convince me, yes, he has diabetes. We got to get him down to the hospital. Then you kind of go through a process. You know, at least I did, certainly a little bit of anger and then finally acceptance, and then you're overwhelmed, just overwhelmed with the thought of the whole thing.
And were there myths and misconceptions about the disease that you had to deal with?
Oh, absolutely. We were told right from the get-go that he'd be hospitalized probably 3 or 4 times a year and that he was going to be restricted from doing a lot of activities. And we had no way of determining whether or not that was true. And it just evolved over time that, no, this kid can do just about everything he wants. Just about, not everything.
Bill, I want to ask you about, because this is what parents think about, the repercussions, the complications, the challenges of the disease when you have a youngster with diabetes. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, there are some things that he can't do. He can't join the military. And he can't fly airplanes commercially. And he can fly an airplane by himself. They're just those kinds of things. And I never really dreamed about him driving a race car. Never even thought about it. And turns out he can.
And we mentioned the advances in medical treatment with diabetes, and I want to ask Bill about that. What advances have you seen in treatment that's helped Todd over the years? Does something stand out as being the most hopeful to you?
Well, of course, we're always hoping for a cure. And we really think that there's always a cure right around the corner. But meanwhile, they work on it so that the treatment aspects of it are so much better. The insulins have been changed such that you have a lot tighter control without the adverse reactions that can happen with diabetic, what do they call it? People refer to it as diabetic shock. They've just, as they change the insulins, it's much easier. That's the reason he can drive a race car. Mm-hmm. When he first started driving a race car, he'd be on the racetrack for 15 or 20 minutes. So you'd take a test before he went out there and you'd know what he was going to be. But now he's in the car for 2 and 3 hours, and he'd better be okay.
Now, we already know that Todd is a race car driver, but I want to back up a step and talk to Bill about what went through your mind when Todd approached you as a teenager. He's 16 years old, he's a diabetic, and it's time for him to get behind the wheel.
Well, I had a teenage driver that liked to test the limits. And yes, there were some really serious concerns. If he were to have a reaction while he was driving, I mean, my understanding is when you have a reaction, it's kind of like the brain works first. It's kind of like being intoxicated. You can't realize what's happening to you. And well, I can just see him run into a light pole or somebody else. So anyway, we insisted that he take a test before he drive, and that he always carry some juice or Gatorade or something like that with him, so if he had any doubt, he could medicate himself. And then the people he had around him also knew what was going on.
Bill, at this point, are there other strategies the foundation is working on or will be working on to help kids with diabetes?
Well, we're working on a program with an affiliation with Brainerd International Raceway. They have a safe driving program, and they're going to modify it, or working on modifying it, to present it to a diabetic driver who's a teen. And it should really bring home some points.
What was your motivation, Bill, to start this foundation called Speed the Cure, and what it might mean for other kids?
Well, the idea for the foundation came when Todd was making a public appearance with his show car, and he was approached by a young man, and the kid just became absolutely enthusiastic because he found out that he could actually drive a race car, which is something he'd always wanted to do, and he'd always been told that he couldn't. And I thought to myself, you know, this doesn't make any sense. And that people are sheltering their kids so much, they won't let them achieve their dreams. Inspiration, and that's what Speed the Cure is about.
Thanks, Bill, and good luck with the foundation. I'm sure that Speed the Cure safe driving program will help diabetic kids and their parents develop a lot more confidence behind the wheel. But most of all, helping these youngsters at an early age helps them develop a sense of confidence they can build on to become tomorrow's leaders in whatever career path they choose. Now, I also had a chance to talk with Scott Cooney from the Brainerd International Raceway Performance Driving School. Now, Scott and his staff are going to work with the Speed the Cure Foundation to modify their Street Smarts program to fit the special needs of diabetic kids. And Scott joins me now. First, let's talk about Street Smarts. What's that program all about?
Well, it's a program specifically designed for teens that goes beyond traditional driver's education. Whereas they teach car operation and traffic law, we go into accident avoidance and emergency maneuvers in critical situations.
Sounds like a great program for all teenagers, but we want to talk about how it's going to be modified to help those teenagers getting behind the wheel with diabetes.
Easily, with the classroom component and the in-car exercises, we can take the classroom component and add those things in that are specific to juveniles with diabetes. And then the in-car exercises, we can also modify and add in exercises that they'll need to know about and educate them on what they need to know when they're driving on the road today.
I can imagine parents are going to love this program, Scott. Brainerd International Speedway, which is where this is focused. Can this program be taken outside Minnesota to help kids with diabetes who are getting behind the wheel?
This program can be taken on the road. The classroom and the in-car exercises can be done in many locations. And in fact, we look forward to helping Speed the Cure take this around the United States to help juveniles with diabetes.
Thanks, Scott, and we look forward to your involvement in the foundation and Brainerd International Speedway. Thanks a lot. What's next? Well, visit the Speed the Cure website at speedthecure.org for more information about the programs and activities of this foundation. They need your help. please ask them what you can do to help them develop a national network of individuals with juvenile diabetes who are leading exceptional lives. Building this network will drive home the point that you can achieve your dreams. The website is going to be a central point for chronicling personal success stories while providing additional news on the medical science advances in diabetes care and hopefully a cure. If you know someone with a great story that should be shared, contact Speed the Cure. If your company or organization would like to help Speed the Cure, contact the foundation. And finally, remember that juvenile diabetes isn't the end of the road for a youngster. With proper perspective and the desire to take control of it, it's the beginning of the journey to achieve your dreams. For Speed the Cure Foundation, I'm Randy Meyer.